SciTech Nutrition. Premium quality products. State-of-the-art look. Uncompromised ingredient quality. Our products work and taste good. www.scitechnutrition.com.
Welcome back to Live With, brought to you by SciTech Nutrition. Visit scitechnutrition.com. I'm your host, Dave Palumbo, and tonight's guest on our Iron Road to the Arnold Classic series is none other than IFBB Pro, EVAN CENTOPANI. Welcome.
What's going on, Dave?
Wow, this is the first time we've spoken on camera in a very, very long time, and it's my pleasure to get you on the Live With TV show.
It's good to be here. I appreciate it.
You know, Evan, I've known you for a real long time. We met in an airport. I think it was the year was 2006. It was the Arnold Classic. We were coming back from Columbus, Ohio, and I had no idea who you were. You had just won the Atlantic States the previous year, the overall, your very first show. And we spoke a little bit, and we wound up working together. And you won the Junior Nationals that year. You placed second at Nationals. We're going to talk all about that. And then you went on, obviously, to win the Nationals the following year. So you've had a pretty whirlwind type of career, almost Phil Heath-ish. Not quite as quick, but it was a quick amateur career into the pros. Let's take you back, though. A lot of people, have heard the story. A lot of people haven't heard the story. As a child, you were very overweight, and that kind of altered your life in a sense. It made a lot of differences and changes in who you became. Talk to me what it was like growing up, basically obese.
Yeah, a lot of bodybuilders come from athletic backgrounds. And I often get asked, well, what sports did you play? Were you an athlete? Is that what led into, getting you into bodybuilding? And people are oftentimes surprised when I say, actually, I was really overweight growing up, and all I wanted was to be skinny. So I actually took up basically starving myself and running in an attempt to get thin. And once I did, and I lost like 80 pounds 1 year at the very beginning of high school. And once I took all that weight off, I really wasn't content with the way that I looked. I envisioned being ripped and, really hard and, just with no fat on my body. And although I had lost all this weight and I felt so much better and much more pleased with the way I looked, I still didn't have the look I wanted. And it became evident to me that I needed to pick up some weights if I was going to do that.
Did you have any clue that you had a propensity for building muscle the way you did? Or was it kind of like I started lifting weights and all of a sudden I discovered this?
Well, once I did make the decision to pick up weights, I was still, it's probably safe to say that I was a little bit, I don't know if you can be a little bit, but I was anorexic at one point. I mean, I was so afraid of eating, and I was starving myself and running 6 miles a day. And when I picked up weights, I was still afraid to eat. And although I wasn't really eating and I was still running a lot at the same time, I was still getting muscular and I was still putting on muscle. And, my father kept telling me, you need to eat. And when I finally eased up a little bit on all the running and I started eating a little bit more, I just added like 30 pounds of muscle within, a year. And, I guess being probably the most muscular kid, in my high school and things like that, despite, not playing sports and being just as strong as a lot of the guys that were, training for football and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I began to think, okay, this is something I'm good at.
Amazing when I look at the pictures. Johnny just had a great picture up there of your transformation from child to what you are now. It's amazing that your skin came back. A lot of people have the loose skin thing when they were young and they gained a lot of weight. Your skin is perfect. You never had saggy skin. It's like you turned into a different person. How did your mind change, however? Because a lot of people see you see a big change physically, but the mind doesn't change as fast as the body does.
That's really a great question, because the time that we're living in, when people are constantly telling other people or telling themselves, you should accept me, even if I'm overweight or I'm this or I'm that, you should accept me, and I accept myself. I didn't feel that way. I didn't accept myself, and truth be told, I was overweight. It wasn't healthy. I was overweight because it was my outward appearance was a reflection of my inner state. And there was laziness, there was a lack of self-control, a lack of discipline. And as I began to transform physically, I learned to master myself mentally. So I needed to go there in order to make that change. And this is going to sound stupid, but I was watching Scooby-Doo with my daughter the other night, and it was an old, episode probably from the early 70s. And one of the guests on the show happened to be this lady who was really overweight. And the whole time they were cracking jokes about her weight. And I was thinking to myself, man, they would never get away with that today. But they were laughing about it, and the person was joking her own weight. I guess my point is that with all the political correctness that we have nowadays and all this acceptance and all this, you can't see color and you can't see, gender, and you can't see all these things. Essentially, the world isn't any happier of a place. People aren't getting along any better. And I just don't think that people in general are doing any better. I don't know what it's all really good for.
Don Romano calls it the pussification of society. And, I think, Donald Trump's whole, campaign is based on political correctness needs to be thrown out the window because look what's happening. The country's falling apart while we're all being so politically correct. But getting back to the mindset, I wanted to get back because you're very mentally strong now. How long did it take you to really accept, and maybe it still hasn't, that you're not a fat guy anymore, because I think even though your body can change outside, internally you still could feel like a fat kid,
Well, that's actually a very applicable question / statement. There's a lot of times, I go through this probably every time I diet, where I'll have a tendency to overdo things. And, it could be myself and, a couple, say, trusted eyes that I would have, around me. And we're all kind of assessing my physique. And they'll say, you look great. And then, these are people that I do trust to not, blow smoke up my ass. And they'll say, no, trust me, you look great. Don't overdo it. Don't push it so far. And I'm like, you sure? I still feel like I look kind of soft. I could be harder. I could be this. I could be that. So to your point, yeah, I do think that inside I do still associate suffering with progress. And yeah, there's probably a part of me that will always see myself as being not lean enough. And at the same time, though, I think that it helped make me a really good bodybuilder, in the sense that I don't think you can be a really great, there are some really exceptional genetic talents in the sport, but I think that the guys that do really, really well, obviously they have a genetic component, but they do have maybe at least a touch of OCD and a willingness to subject themselves to, push it.
You're always in the best shape. I've never seen you out of shape on stage ever. Never, ever, ever. You might have come in too flat one year or something like that, but never, ever out of shape. And I think that that's a testament to your work ethic and what your mindset at this point. And I think that, like you said, it's sometimes good to have that extra push to have to be better than you really are, because let's face it, exceptional people win exceptional shows, and that's really how the sport works. Let's go back to that first show you did in 2005, the Atlantic States. Johnny just put some video footage up there on the screen. We were watching him. You looked amazing at that show as well, and you didn't even really know that much of what you were doing. You kind of did your diet all by yourself. Why did you wait so long to compete for the first time? Because people told me that years prior to this, you were ready to get on the stage, but you waited specifically for 2005. Why?
Well, I didn't wait specifically for 2005. I was training at the gym at the time, and I made friends with a bodybuilder who was training at my gym, big guy, and we became friends. And he was actually getting ready for a competition, and he said, you should do a show. You're crazy if you don't compete. And I was like, well, I'd like to at some point, but I don't. I mean, dude, you're talking to a guy. I didn't know what the NPC was. I didn't know any of it. He's like, look, there's a show coming up in 10 weeks. It's called the Atlantic States. You should just do the show. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I was, fat and out of shape, and I just decided to diet, and I got in shape, and it was just going to really be a one-time thing. It was like, well, I've been training hard, and I'm curious. I've never been in contest conditions, so I'm really curious to see what I would look like. So I just want to just do it one time, and I did. And that kind of that was kind of life-changing.
When you hit the stage in 2006 and won the NPC Junior Nationals, you beat Ben White in the overall. I was there, and very proud of you. And then you went on to place second at Nationals behind Desmond Miller, and obviously make a big statement on the bodybuilding world. MD signed you. You were on the cover of Muscular Development. How did your life change after that, from a mental perspective as well as a materialistic perspective?
Well, I think that it might not have changed as much as it would maybe for some other people. I mean, still, I kept my job. I kept my full-time job. And, I was telling this story to someone the other day, and I said, well, after my first competition, I competed on a Saturday. I went into work on Monday. When I did the Junior Nationals, despite, when you were there, and, I went out to California to shoot for MD the day after the show. And I don't know, I might have got back on like a Wednesday. And I think I went to work on Thursday. And I kind of started telling this story. And I said, but I always just went back to work. So although I had started to have this really tremendous amount of success in bodybuilding, not to say that I saw it as a side thing, but it was always part of my life. And then at some point, I guess it became a greater focus. But initially, I think it was an evolution. It took some time for it to sink in. There was still, when people would ask, well, what do you do? I was reluctant to ever say, well, I'm a bodybuilder, or I'm a professional bodybuilder. I would say, well, I write for a magazine, or I represent a supplement company. But I don't know why, but I never called myself a professional bodybuilder.
Remember, after you won the Nationals in 2007 and you won the overall, and I remember Jose Raymond was in the middleweight class. You beat him that year in the overall. I remember you telling me, yeah, I'm going to keep my job. I'm not, I'm not quitting my job ever, And I said, you will one day. You'll have enough to do in bodybuilding. You'll be making enough money. And you're like, no, I'm never getting rid of my regular job. Why were you so reluctant? Was you nervous about the whole, taking the plunge full force into bodybuilding?
I guess I was, there was a little bit of fear. You always want to have, not a backup, but if you can remain independent and not reliant, say I didn't have to rely entirely on the bodybuilding industry for my livelihood. For me, I think it was about maintaining control over my life. And truth be told, I liked my job. I worked as a title searcher, and if the real estate market hadn't taken such a plunge back then, I'd probably still be doing it. I enjoyed it. It gave. I saw so many guys who submersed themselves entirely in the industry. They were not only so wrapped up in the industry themselves, but they were also married to someone in the industry. And I saw it so many times, and I felt like they lost perspective on real life in the real world. And I was happy that I found someone and stayed with someone and am still with someone who is not involved in the industry. And I think maybe my desire to keep a job outside of the industry was part of that. And to be totally honest, it's still not that I regret quitting that job, because it wasn't, the real estate market just wasn't the same. But had it stayed the same, 100%, I would still have kept it and still be doing it.
Interesting. All right. I didn't know that. Let's talk about your dietary principles and some of your beliefs, because, this is something that a lot of the fans love to hear you talk about, watch you do your cooking videos and talk about nutrition and stuff like that. And I remember when we first met, we did a lot of speaking. We talked a lot about essential fatty acids and nutrition, and you were always very interested and always like a sponge, and you picked the stuff up very easily and you assimilated it into your own program, and you have your own principles now that you follow. You are the kind of guy that does not like to go out and eat in restaurants. I've seen you in the off season where a whole bunch of friends of yours would go out to eat, and you would maybe either just sit there or not even go. Talk to me a little bit about why you're so stringent in the way you eat all the time and your health.
Well, going back to, when you and I used to work together, you were a really large influence on me. And contrary to, what a lot of people thought, because I would get asked by people all the time, oh, does Dave, does he really push you really hard? Does he, encourage you to, take a lot of risks and, things like that? And I'd say, honestly, compared to what I've heard a lot of other people do, if anything, Dave's really, really conservative and actually very health oriented. And, I would always listen to you and hear you speak about, whether, like you said, whether it was essential fatty acids, anything really, there was always a health component built into what you preached. And that resonated with me, that appealed to me. I was able to identify with that, and that always stuck with me. And throughout the years, even when I went off on my own, I think part of it is getting older and, my father, seeing my father get cancer, and people around you, people that have died, and mortality becomes a real thing. And having a daughter now, you realize, okay, I want to, I'm going to be there, to see her be married, and I want to be on this planet for as long as possible. So granted, I want to pursue bodybuilding at an elite level. I want to look good, but I also want to be healthy, and I want to do it the smartest way possible. So for me, health has become a really important part of professional bodybuilding. And although a lot of people would say, well, that's ironic, or that doesn't make any sense. You're somebody who pushes your body to the limit, and you do things that are unhealthy. How could you be worried about your health? And I think that's one of the most ignorant statements that anyone could make, because if you're part of the general public, okay, you look at the popularity of things like detoxes and, eating a healthful diet and things like that. If the general public would stand to benefit from, an improved, healthier, cleaner lifestyle, well, then I think someone who is in the bodybuilding / fitness industry, or any elite athlete who pushes their body or subjects their body to things that are, is not always nice, would especially stand to benefit. And it makes a lot of sense. So that's become really important to me.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point, and I'm going to give it some clarification based on my life. People always like to remember me because I always used to say that I ate McDonald's every single day, and it was true. I would eat McDonald's cheeseburgers every single day while I competed because I had such a fast metabolism that I needed to do that to keep my weight on. However, However, every other meal that I ate during the day was super, super clean and healthy, and I took supplements, and I was very, very, prudent and calculated about what I put into my body. Just recently, I went to the doctor. They did a cardiac cath of me to check my blood vessels out because I wanted to see how my cardiac vessels were, and they were completely clear. And I was a nervous wreck because I said, I did eat McDonald's every day for 8 years. I wonder if it screwed me up. And it just goes to show you that, everything's about moderation. And if you have a game plan about how to keep yourself healthy, and you do detoxes every year, and you do, consciously, pay attention to what you're putting in your body and understand what the stuff does that you're putting into your body, I think that bodybuilding can be a healthy lifestyle, even though we do put our bodies through certain rigors that maybe the general population doesn't. And I think it's smart and wise on your part to do that. And I think that a lot of people should use you as a I guess you could say a role model in that sense. Let's move on, Evan, to I want to just say something. Back early in your career, I was one of the guys who said this guy could be a future Mr. Olympia. I truly believed it. I still believe it today. And by any modicum of measurement, your bodybuilding career has been a success. You've won pro shows. You've gone to the Olympia. You've been on the Arnold stage. You placed top 5 at the Arnold. What would you consider, yourself to be as far as success in the bodybuilding industry? Do you feel that you've accomplished all you want to accomplish? What are your future goals? What would you like to retire saying that you've won or accomplished in bodybuilding?
Well, I think, when I was younger, I equated, say success in the sport to, you would say, well, the greatest measurable amount of success I could have in this sport would be winning the Olympia. And in reality, I've seen, the reality is you could win the Olympia, and I don't know. Truth be told, if I could walk away from the sport, retire, and say, wow, I somehow changed the sport, or I left a positive imprint there, or I was able to positively influence the thinking or bring about a different way of thought, then I think that would be a success. Because truth be told, if you go and you like I said, you accomplish the greatest feat that the sport has to offer, and you win the Olympia, but you still don't offer something to the sport. You don't do anything for the better. You don't positively influence people. Really, for me, it's not a great success. So at this point, if I could continue to be competitive in the sport and to do it in a way that's healthy and to communicate to people, because look, there's so much misinformation out there, and when I see what really does bother me, what really disturbs me, is seeing the things that a lot of the younger kids talk about on the internet, and the prevalence of all these guys on the internet talking about drugs, and you see what a lot of people are doing and the mindset that's out there, and it's just so unhealthy. So it's the antithesis of what a positive lifestyle should be about. So if I could be a force to change that thinking, or to show people that there's a better way, then that would be a success.
Do that, Evan, because you know what? You make a very, very valid point. We live in this, and I've said this before, we live in this anti-hero society where the guys that are the craziest, biggest rebels on YouTube are the people that these younger kids are like looking up to. Look at the hits on some of these YouTube videos by some of these people that are talking about taking 20,000 milligrams of anabolic steroids a week. Look at these crazy hits you see on these videos of these people saying to do wacky, insane stuff. And to me, I'm like, stop watching this. I can't believe people are watching this. And I go crazy. And I go on these rants sometimes because it's mind-boggling to me that people do not want to learn the right way to do things. They want to learn like the badass way of doing things. How do you make an impact, Evan? You're a great bodybuilder. You have a great physique. You have a great image. You're a family man. How do you make an impact on this younger generation? In doing it in a way that will make these kids take notice.
Well, I think to your point, and it's just part of the society we live in, I do think that people are always going to be drawn to sensational things. Those are always going to get views. It's always going to get attention. That said, and I could be guilty of this myself. It's one thing to tell somebody, no, that's not the way you do it. And it's another thing to show people the way to do it. So really what I would like to do, whether it's through, I think you have to, essentially, I think what a lot of these kids are drawn to, whether they're looking at, they're looking at some of these guys, and I think they think, wow, these guys are getting a lot of girls, and, they're driving these cars, and, all this nonsense. Essentially what it's about is a lifestyle, and it's a lifestyle that they perceive as being cool. If you were able to effectively show people that you can lead a lifestyle that is like, look, you don't need to lock yourself in a closet and eat, you can look good, you can feel good, you can be healthy, that essentially you can have it all. I think that is a message that people do want to hear. And I think it's a message that is true to some degree. How much do we have to compromise in life? Because, let's be honest, who wants to compromise? So I think that if you can show people, not just tell them, but show them, through the production of media, and this is something that I would like to do further, through more cooking stuff and just more lifestyle, media, show people that, look, there's something out there. You can be dynamic. You can enjoy your life. You can enjoy your friends, your family. Yeah, you can train hard. You don't have to pigeonhole yourself and be this one type. To be a badass, you don't have to be covered head to toe in tattoos. That doesn't make you a badass. Like, you can, being a badass is just being a fucking man. And I think that's what the country, look, when you're looking at what's going on right now in the country, you hear people and they'll talk about Vladimir Putin and they'll say, well, he's a man, and they're drawn to his personality. That's why I think a lot of people are drawn to Trump, because they look at the current leader of this country, they look at Obama and they say, he's not a leader, he's not a man. The country needs a leader. People need a leader. They need strong role models, and they need strong leadership. And currently, it's just not there. So they by default, you get people, you get a lot of these social media rejects, ascending to heights, just because there's nothing better. And let's be honest, it's a sad day in the country. Look at the current lineup that we have for the presidency. They all suck. Every last one of them. They're pathetic. It's a bad day when that's the best we have to choose from. But it's the same thing when it comes down to our role models. Our role models, Kim Kardashian's popular not because she's great, just because everybody else is that shitty. They just need something better.
Evan, I agree. I think you're one of the best role models currently on the circuit right now. But I'm gonna call you out a little bit. You tend to be more reclusive. You don't like to travel a lot. You're not doing the Jay Cutler tours. I think Cutler is another terrific role model. I put you up there with Jay in terms of being able to give back, show a lifestyle that someone could emulate in a healthy, productive, business-savvy way. Do you think you should be getting out there more and trying to make more of an impact on the industry and on the youth of the bodybuilding world?
Yes. I think you're 110% right. And that is my goal, is to be out there more. And I was always so wound up so tight, based around my bodybuilding career. And I'm not there anymore. That's not where I'm at anymore. I can train, I can eat, I can do all those things, and I can travel, I can do all that. Yes, no, you're right. And that is my goal. That is what's coming, is to be out there more, to meet more people, to spread the message that I want to spread.
It's important. I think you do have a lot to say, and I think that you've had, like you've said, you've been reserved over the last couple of years, and I think now is the time to really you're in the prime of your career at this point. You're a very popular individual. People listen to what you say, and I think that they just got to see more of you. And I think that
I think you're 100% right.
And this is a good start. This interview, I'm sure, is going to be excellent. I think a lot of people are going to contact you. The message you send is very positive. Let's talk a little bit about your family life, because I know family life is very important to you. You keep them very private. I can respect that. Did family importance was that nurtured or brought about in your being through your own family, or is that something that you always wanted intuitively, to have the wife and the kid and the home life?
Well, I think the value of family started for me, growing up. My parents were divorced, and although my parents were divorced, I saw my father 3-4 times a week. He would come pick me up. He spent a lot of time with me. I did a lot with my father growing up. He included me in everything. He taught me a lot. He always came through. He was somebody who, to this day, if I needed to call somebody up and go, Dad, I've got this body in the trunk of my car. I got to do something with it. He'd go, all right, let's go, let me get my shovel. So, look, and this, you hear it, and he told me this. Look, family is family. I've got some really good friends, that I know I could rely on, but family is, at least the way it's supposed to be. They'll be there no matter what, what kind of shit you find yourself in. So I think that was just kind of ingrained in me from the beginning. Now, as I get older, I always knew that I wanted a family, that I wanted, that I wanted a kid, or, multiple children. And to be honest, that was always one of my greatest fears as a bodybuilder. What if I screwed that up for myself? I can still remember, the day that Erica called me, and she was on the phone. She said, "Oh my God, I got to talk to you." I said, "Oh shit, what did I do wrong?" And she's like, "You have to come meet me." And I'm like, "Oh wow, it must be really bad." I said, "Well, just tell me, you're freaking me out." And she said, "I think I'm pregnant." And I remember just a big smile coming on my face, and I laughed. And she's, "Why are you laughing?" And I said, "Well, and part of it, I think, for me was this sense of relief, that although it had come at an unexpected, maybe less than on time, this was the greatest thing ever." And truth, I don't know. Look, what good is my life, or what I've learned, or what I accomplish, if I can't pass it on or give it to somebody else or help? What's it all for, right?
I had my first, kid just 4 weeks ago, so I can completely relate to what you said. And me being the scientist, I always knew that I could produce the baby if I wanted to, and it happened. Obviously, I had to meet the right person, and I did. And obviously, we have a beautiful son, and we'll probably have a second kid shortly, because I'm getting old. I'm approaching 50. I have a funny question. Cedric McMillan says that there are 3 G's in bodybuilding. The 3 temptations, he calls them, that most bodybuilders strive for. It's girls, ganja, and GH. How does Evan Centopani, when he's traveling and he has all these fans around him, avoid the 3 G's?
What are the 3 G's?
Girls, ganja, and GH.
Oh.
The temptations when you're on the road and you have girls coming up to you and you have people, oh, let's go party. How do you stay so grounded? Because you're like a machine. I don't know how you do it. There's a lot of temptation out there.
I don't know. I mean, look, girls are everywhere, right? And hey, there's some girls that are nice to look at, right? But at the end of the day, I remind myself, I don't know. It's not important. I know what I've got. I've got I mean, look, good-looking girls a dime a dozen. I mean, I've got a wife who I can count on, who I can rely on, who, I mean, she is a great mother to my child. To risk, fucking all that up, just because some girl's good, and it doesn't even, I don't know, it's not even a thought. Ganja is, that's never been my thing. I'm not going to say I don't have any vices, but drugs, alcohol, gambling, women, I guess none of them actually have been my vices. I guess, what is my vice? I guess bodybuilding's always been my vice.
Macadamia nut oil and French fries, yeah. Let me ask you this question. We got the Arnold Classic coming up in less than 4 weeks now. You've placed top 5 every single time you've done it. You have to be considered one of the favorites going into the show. Obviously, Kai Green in this lineup. Kai Green hasn't stepped on stage in almost 2 years now. We don't know what the mindset or the physical condition of his body will be. He's been very quiet. Obviously, a lot of talk about Justin Compton, who was 3rd last year. Where do you see Evan Centopani fitting into this lineup? And do you feel that you could have a legitimate shot at winning this title?
To be totally honest, this is probably this show, leading into the show is probably the least amount of thought or consideration I've given to where it is I'm going to place. But that being said, like you said, I mean, obviously, I have every reason to assume that Kai is going to be, ultra competitive. I'm sure he's going to be nothing short of absolutely impressive. Same thing with Justin Compton. I mean, these are guys who certainly I would say they outmass me. I'm certainly not as heavily muscled per square inch as either of them. I know, that I know what my strong points are, being conditioning, and look, in any of these pro shows, anybody has a shot. I mean, if I was someone who'd never cracked the top 5, I'd probably say, well, realistically, it would be a great feat for me to break top 5. But the reality is, do I think I could battle for a top spot? Yeah, I think so. I don't doubt that.
Very good shot at, look, you've been as high as 3rd place in 2012. Some argue you might have been able to win that year had you been a little fuller. So, once again, no one knows who's going to show up in shape or who's going to look their best. I'm assuming we're going to see the best Evan Centopani on that Arnold Classic stage. Will we see you in Australia the week after?
Yes, which this year is actually 2 weeks after, which is nice.
That's right, yeah.
But yes, I will be there.
Big fan base in Australia. Tony Doherty told me when you went there, I guess it was last year, or whatever the first year you went there, they were going crazy for you over there. Isn't it amazing how Australia is like, they love American bodybuilders there?
Yeah, great bodybuilding culture in Australia. I found that the two most receptive places when it comes to bodybuilding have been the UK and Australia.
Didn't you had a little thing with Poland for a while? Weren't you going to Poland and doing some appearances?
Yeah, at the time, Universal had a distributor that was cranking out a lot of product. Who did a lot. He was the editor. He had the rights to the Polish version of Muscular Development, and he went on to start his own supplement company. But he did a lot. He held competitions and he did tours. So he had offered to bring us over a few times, and he was always great. So yeah, to your point, Eastern Europe, yeah, Poland was really really receptive as well, and I could only imagine that a lot of the other Eastern European countries would be as well.
Now, Evan, you were with Universal Nutrition your whole career, essentially. You left them for a brief stint with another company. I don't know exactly what went down, and then you left there and you went back to Universal. How did that transition occur? Was that an amicable thing? Did it feel good to kind of come back home to the company that originally had hired you?
It did. I mean, look, the industry has changed a lot. in the past, even and I haven't been in the sport a really long time by any stretch. I've been in it, from the time I started as an amateur to now, it's been 10 years. But a lot has changed. And I mean, you've seen all these small companies pop up, and a lot has changed. To make a long story short, it's great to be back with a company who does things, what I would say, they does things the right way, meaning, they have a legitimate, okay, if you look at bodybuilding, right, and you see the way a lot of companies are doing things, with the way that they do their marketing with social media and the way they utilize, quote, utilize their athletes and their brand ambassadors. And then you look out at the real world, at real companies like Nike and, Gatorade and, all these large companies. And you look at the difference, you go, man, you realize how, for lack of a better word, tacky and cheap a lot of the stuff that they're doing in bodybuilding that the supplement companies are doing. And I'm fortunate enough to be back with a company who has a legitimate understanding of what it is to do things in a way that is proper, is real, is well thought out. They have, I mean, this I don't think it's just my bias when I say that Universal, whether you like their branding or not, Universal/Animal has the most coherent, cohesive branding in the industry. They've developed, a form of branding. They've stayed true to it, and they've been able to communicate an idea that's based on more than tits and ass, and they give back to the community. And they've created a real lifestyle brand. So yeah, it's
their branding. I love the branding of Animal. I will say one thing that I don't like. I don't know why they don't use you more in their ads. You have been the vision and the face of the company for a number of years now, and I just don't see them using you enough. I feel like they underuse you, especially given your image. You're a good-looking guy. You got a great physique. I'd like to see more Evan Centopani on their branding.
Yeah, I can't disagree. But in their defense, I'd have to say, you'll never see a Universal ad. I'm sure if you reflect on a lot of the Animal/Universal stuff you've seen containing me, you'll never see my name, my accomplishments. And really, that's done for a reason, because a lot of it is about more than the individual, meaning more than myself. It's about an idea. It's about a concept. So while that could be a double-edged sword for an athlete, you say, well, it'd be great to be out there more. I understand. That being said, I think they do have a lot of plans, to utilize me a bit more maybe than they did in the past. And I'm happy about that.
Excellent. Real quick, who do you feel is the greatest bodybuilder of all time?
Lee
Haney. Why?
Undoubtedly. Look, we can't argue that Arnold has been the biggest star, and he has done so many big things. I think all things considered, I think that Lee Haney's physique was incredible. Beyond that, to still be married to his high school sweetheart, to be someone who is nothing short, ever, in any circumstance, short of a gentleman. He's a role model, and he's a man. He's just through and through. There's nothing negative you could say about him. All things considered, he's an 8-time Mr. Olympia, one of the greatest physiques of all time, role model, just a everything that a hero should be.
Who do you think is the biggest disappointment in our industry? The guy who had the most potential, who just blew it, basically, in your mind.
Oh, geez. I don't know. I guess I don't know how great his potential was, but obviously, anytime someone puts a blemish in sport, someone like a Craig Titus, or something like that. Obviously, that's really regrettable. But in terms of being a waste of talent, I don't know. Well, I don't know who in your mind.
Lee Priest comes to mind to me. I think he was a very self-destructive. I think he could be owning the universe right now, the bodybuilding universe, that is, if he really had, stayed focused and stayed positive. I think that he just wanted to go that route we talked about a little earlier of the rebel, and I think he went too far. And I think he kind of pushed himself out of the industry. But there's a lot of guys, I guess, that can fill that void. But Lee Priest might be the most famous in that respect. Well, Evan, I just wanted to...
No, I was just gonna say, I could understand that. I don't know. I'm sure he's said or done some things that maybe he regrets. Yeah, I don't know. No comment.
I mean, he marches to his own drummer for certain.
He did. I guess that's what I was gonna say. I do respect the fact that he marches to the beat of his own drum.
All right, well, Evan, we want to wish you the best of luck up on that Arnold Classic stage. Obviously, we'll be there covering the event, and you got to make me look like I know what I'm talking about. You got to win. You got to win the Arnold. You got to win the Olympia. I still stand behind that you can do it. I feel you have the talent. I know that that's not the main goal in your career anymore, but I think that you do. You can do it if you put your mind to it. I think you're still in the prime of your career. I think you still have a lot of great years behind you. Let me ask you this question. How much longer do you see yourself competing?
Geez, I don't know. That's a great question. I feel so good this year, in my preparations, and everything feels good. I feel that I've been able to strike a really great balance between looking good, feeling good, being healthy. I realistically, I feel like I could easily go on another 10 years. I would probably say realistically, I don't know, maybe another 5 years.
Which usually means 10 years for a bodybuilder. I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Well, once again, thanks a lot again, and good luck in the rest of your prep for the next 4 weeks. And I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you don't do a lot of interviews to come on live with.
I appreciate it. It was nice talking. It was great being. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Dave.
All right, that'll take us to the end of another episode of Live With, brought to you by SciTech Nutrition. Visit scitechnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.